friends, welcome back to my channel and another episode of History with Miss Barney, a Civil War story version. Before we get started, a quick shout out to you guys. You guys have just been like absolutely crushing it with getting in your work lately. I am so impressed, so keep up the great work. And then huge thank you to everybody who wished me happy birthday or who has like sent a teacher appreciation message. Those mean a lot and it's just like so nice of you guys to do that, so thank you. I had a great birthday. One of the best parts of my birthday was that I got Moose Tracks ice cream, which is for sure the superior ice cream. So, speaking of your past attendance question failures, we're gonna have a new bracket. It's gonna be a shorter bracket because we don't have too much time left in class. But anyway, this bracket is gonna be like who has been the most impressive person we've talked about this year. Like who, if things were normal and there was no coronavirus, you know, if dead people could come back to life, who would you want to give like a fist bump to, okay? So for me to choose who's going to be on that list, you guys needed to vote for your bell ringers for like the top like 8 people that we've talked about in class. So make sure you do that and I'll have the bracket ready tomorrow. But anyway, let's get to the Civil War, shall we? So yesterday you guys talked about Gettysburg, probably the most famous battle of the Civil War and one of the most important ones because it was kind of a turning point of the war. Now this was like for sure the deadliest battle of the war, like just horrific casualties, but one of the things that's important about it is that after this, the South would never try to invade the North again, and that was kind of like the closest the South was ever gonna come to potentially winning the war. Things are gonna start to get a little nasty for the South. General Lee had been defeated, however, he had once again escaped and not had his army destroyed. Lincoln's not very happy, and so even though his new general, General Meade, had technically defeated Lee, he hadn't destroyed his army, he hadn't chased him down, and then he hadn't engaged Lee in battle since Gettysburg, and so at this point, Lincoln's had it, and he finally is going to call up the one guy, one general, who has proved that he's a fighter. This is going to lead to our first spotlight of the day. Here is the spotlight on how Grant finally takes command of the Union Army.
So in 1864, Lincoln finally puts General Grant in charge of all the Union armies. He was actually promoted to Lieutenant General, which was the same position that George Washington had during the Revolutionary War. So just to remind you, Grant was a fearless soldier and he was willing to use the large army he was commanding. He was a lot different from the head Union generals that had come before him. He was a fighter and he was not timid. His strategy was going to be to deliver killing blows from all sides, and his main objective was going to be to destroy Lee's army. So just to kind of sum up his viewpoint towards the war, if you look at the quote on the right side, he said, "Whatever happens, there will be no turning back." So he was determined to win this war at any cost.
We're actually not focusing on Grant today though. Instead, we are going to focus on Sherman, who I mentioned a while ago but you might have forgotten about, so let's review the guy real quick. Also, can't forget that his middle name was Tecumseh, which I think is super cool because he was named after the Shawnee warrior. So, hey. Sherman had a bad start to the Civil War. He was actually back east at the start of it, but he was really timid, he was very paranoid, and he actually had a mental breakdown and had to take leave from the army for a little bit. After he recovered, he went out west and he started to work with Grant and he saw some more success. Last week, I kind of mentioned to you guys that by the end of the war, Sherman was going to be absolutely hated in the South. So today I am going to tell you the story of how that came to be.
When Grant was called to the east, he unleashed General Sherman in the west and gave him permission to begin moving further south. Sherman was not a merciful man, as you are going to see from this quote down here. This is his attitude towards the Southerners. He said, "I would make this war as severe as possible and show no symptoms of tiring until the South begs for mercy."
So from that quote, we can probably guess the South is not going to have a very easy time dealing with Sherman. Sherman was determined to bring total war to the Confederate States.
Total war is a strategy in which militaries use any means necessary to win, including those considered morally or ethically wrong.
For Sherman, total war meant that he was going to bring terror, violence, starvation, and homelessness to the Southern people. And it was going to start with the Atlanta campaign.
So this is the story of the Atlanta campaign. Sherman's main goal was to capture Atlanta, Georgia, which was the heart of the South. Him and Confederate General Johnston engaged in short attacks, with Sherman's troops pushing closer and closer to Atlanta. Jefferson Davis replaced Johnston with General Hood, who put up a much more aggressive but much more costly fight against Sherman. Eventually, however, Hood and the Confederate Army were besieged and Atlanta fell to Sherman and the Union, and the Confederates abandoned the city.
But after the Confederates abandon Atlanta, Sherman actually orders the city to be evacuated of civilians, and the mayor of Atlanta sends him a letter begging him to reconsider, and his response,
Sherman's letter to Atlanta read, "You cannot qualify war in harsher terms than I will. War is cruelty, and you cannot refine it. And those who brought war into our country deserve all the curses and maledictions a people can pour out." So Sherman had absolutely no pity for the people of Atlanta. He thought they deserved this. So the citizens are evacuated, and following that, Sherman orders his men to destroy Atlanta before they leave. And if you take a look at these pictures, you can see the destruction that they caused.
So unfortunately for the southern states, Sherman was not done after Atlanta. The march to the sea was going to be his next objective. He was going to march all the way through Atlanta until he reached the coast. And he had a very good idea of what he planned to do on that march.
Sherman said, "I intend to make Georgia howl."
In order to do this, Sherman was going to scorch the earth.
Scorched earth is a military strategy that aims to destroy anything that might be useful to the enemy, and this is what Sherman was going to do on his march to the sea. So you can see the route they took on this map on the right, and on the way down to Savannah, him and his men took food from people, they burned homes and entire towns to the ground, they burned farmland, so that destroyed their economy with their cash crops and any food crops they might have had. They cut telegraph lines, cutting off communication. They destroyed railroad lines, which cut off transportation and made it so the Confederates couldn't get troops down there to stop them. And then they killed livestock, which also hurt the food supply. But this is kind of interesting. Many Black Americans left their homes to follow Sherman to freedom. So even though he was basically like the devil to white Southerners, like there to destroy their home and everything they cared about, to Black Americans, he was like this liberator who was there to free him. So some different perspectives there.
Eventually, Sherman makes it to the coastal city of Savannah, and he sends this letter to Lincoln to announce it.
Sherman's letter to Lincoln read, "I beg to present you, as a Christmas gift, the city of Savannah."
Even after this, Sherman still wasn't done, and him and his army turned north and began marching that way, terrifying the other southern states because they knew what was going to happen when he came through. So Sherman brought a lot of terror to the South, and he did this on purpose. He was bringing all of this terror because he wanted to make it so the Southerners would lose their will to fight the war because they were losing so much in the process. And a ton of Southerners did start to lose the will to fight, but there was still a little bit of hope, and a lot of them were placing all of their hope on General Lee. They were hoping that he would continue to hurt the Union Army like he had been for years, and that he would continue to beat them so badly that Lincoln would be pressured to finally end the war. Lee was planning to do this himself, except he was about to meet General Grant. And that is going to be the subject for tomorrow's video, so tune in as we finally talk about the end of this war. As for now, go answer the questions on this video, and you guys will be done for the day. Have a great day. I'll see you guys later. Bye.